So Joe Rogan finally went against himself and he had Trump on his podcast. Finally, about time. Been hoping that would happen. I think Trump's been doing the rounds. He's been going on the podcast. So he was on PBD recently. I think he was with what's his face, uh, Theo Vaughn. He's been on all these podcasts and he's been doing this, making the rounds. So finally, guess Joe decided to have him on, which is awesome. If you watch this, you'll know what I'm saying. It started out a little slow. It was a little bit, I think Joe was trying to feel out Trump and how to talk to him and how to get him to, um, how to kind of get him to answer the questions as well as just kind of engage properly. Because I think Trump is used to having his hackles up a little and being attacked. So it was kind of like almost like relaxing Trump at first, and then it went quite smoothly and quite well. That's one of Joe's strong suits. He's able to really interview people well, and it doesn't feel like an interview; it feels more like a discussion. So it was really good. If you haven't watched it, I suggest you watch it. But let's read this article here. This is it's not. Don't worry, it's not a very good article here. It's the New Republic, so don't expect much. It says Fox News, yes, really, exposes Joe Rogan's shady pro-Trump move. So I wonder what way these guys lean. Even Fox News has raised its eyebrows at podcasting behemoth Joe Rogan's decision not to interview Vice President Kamala Harris, despite penning in 3-hour slot for Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. During a Sunday discussion on the network between Fox News host Howard Kurtz and pundit Carolyn Downey, the Media Buzz anchor claimed that it was Rogan who had stiffed the Harris campaign, which I call bullshit on that, because if you watch the podcast, Joe talks about that and he says that he wants to have Harris on, and he thought she was going to be on, or thought there was a good chance that she'd be on, but now he wasn't sure it was going to happen. And he was basically saying that the Harris campaign pulled out, which I would bet dollars to donuts that is what happened. It doesn't seem like it's very advantageous for her to go on Rogan. I don't think she can really handle questions at all. You watch some of the softball interviews that she's had with others like Anderson Cooper. Cooper might be right, actually. It's like he's a game character. But where he asked her about the border and stuff, and she just, about not getting things done, and she just circled him with some bullshit answer that had nothing to do with anything. It was just word salad. So I don't think she can handle it. I think she knows she couldn't handle it. So I think she pulled out. But this article suggests otherwise. Downey argued that the lopsided interview opportunity proved a net benefit to Trump's campaign, since every hit that Kamala Harris does, every TV hit that Kamala Harris does, she comes off more bitter, more angry, and more jaded, whereas Trump comes off as a normal guy. I agree with that completely. But again, if you've watched this podcast with Trump, you'll know what I mean. Even the one with PBD was the same. It was like he came off just like a normal dude. I mean, he's not going to say all the right stuff at the right times, and he rambles on a little bit, and he kind of goes off track a little bit. But everybody does that when you're having a conversation. I do it all the time on here. So Kamala Harris claims she's trying to cater to the younger generation, but she's sticking to legacy media interviews for the most part, and she refused to go on Rogan, Downey said. But Kurtz was quick to push back on Downey's behind-the-scenes speculation. Well, no, I don't think that's true. I think she wanted to go on Joe Rogan, and I don't think Rogan wanted her, Kurtz said. I think it would have been a good thing if she'd gone. So even though Rogan, I believe, has refused to have Trump on in the past, he seemed largely sympathetic to the former president. Well, he said he was. He said ever since there was an attempt on Trump's life that he was, he was more sympathetic to him. And obviously, he's always kind of said that there's nobody that's ever been treated worse by the legacy media than Trump. So he does have some kind of sympathy towards Trump. And I think they're both like real dudes. So I think he probably likes him as a person. He just doesn't necessarily agree with a lot of his political stance. And you heard him discuss the media as a bunch of left-wing Democrats, the host added. In recent weeks, Trump has dodged mainstream news appearances, including going as far as to break election tradition by refusing to sit for a 60 Minutes interview in September, which he reportedly backed out of last minute over fears that the rigorous show would fact-check him. The rigorous show? You mean the joke show would fact-check him? Yeah, well, they've shown their cards. They're obviously a left-leaning thing, or, they're in the pockets of the mainstream media. So Instead, Trump has regulated or relegated his TV appearances to friendlier, more sycophantic networks, including Fox News, whose anchor Maria Bartiromo did not interrupt or correct Trump when he claimed that the real election day threat is the enemy from within, while suggesting that the military should forcibly involve itself in handling the election results. The chat with Rogan, who hosts one of the biggest podcasts in the country for Republican and independent men, has the potential to significantly sway undecided voters for either candidate. I love that they say that. For Republican and independent men. Okay, that's an assertion that you can't back. Whatever. I told you. I kind of prefaced this article would be a bit of a dumpster fire, but so we can't expect too much. Yeah, it's if watch the podcast if you haven't watched the podcast with Trump, it was great. I'm not even if you watch older podcasts of me, I'll tell you I'm not really a Trump fan necessarily. I'm not like a big pro Trump guy. But I don't know, watching him now more in these podcasts and stuff, I think he's a really cool dude. I think he might be a really cool guy to know. I think he'd be really loyal, kind of a good friend like that. I mean, you want to get on his bad side, obviously. He's going to talk shit about you and maybe sue you and stuff. And I think his policies are better than anyone else's right now. I don't think it's hard to have good common sense policies. I think that's where he leans on, and obviously, if you see the other side of the campaign copying his ideas, he's probably got some pretty good ones. So I don't know. I'm being pushed more towards Trump, even though I'm more of a moderate and I like to stay in the middle. But this podcast was a good thing for him, I think. Again, like I said, started out slow, so don't expect too much right off the bat, but it definitely gets a lot better and then finishes off quite well. The 3 hours pass by pretty quick. So, but let me know what you think after, if you've watched it or after watching it in the comments.